Welcome to Ranger Stories. My name is Tennyson E. Stead. I am the creator of Jump Rangers. And this is the show where I read things that I'm writing in the Jump Rangers universe and probably edit and discuss them for your viewing pleasure. Today we're reading Jump Rangers, A Game Called Conquest, Chapter 19. If you'd like to catch up on previous episodes of Ranger Stories, you can find those episodes on our YouTube channel at youtube.com/@JumpRangers. Let's begin. When Scrap popped the Sarge and I back into our bunk room at the Rangers' Roost, two other Rangers were sleeping in the berth there. I'll just say, sleeping in our berths. What do you say in a situation like that? Sorry, Rangers, this is the only bunk with any privacy that our teleporting space mouse actually knows, here at the Rooster. No. For one thing, I really do need to stop calling Scrap a space mouse. Either Scrap isn't a mouse at all, or mice aren't actually from Earth in the first place, and all mice are space mice. Besides, no amount of explanation was going to make it okay that the Sarge and I just randomly popped into existence at their breakfast table. I said hey, they said hey. The Sarge and I walked out that door before things had time to get even weirder. While the Sarge and I were working things out on Planet Mist, Ranger High Command was on their way here to meet us. Outside, High Command had taken over two of Uncle Slappy's diner booths like any bunch of kids would do. Uncle Slappy watched them from behind the lunch counter. Making our way over, the Sergeant and I presented ourselves to the table. Dio, High Command's Techno Ranger, waved us into some seats. While the both of us sat down and started explaining what we'd found on Planet Mist, Uncle Slappy started grilling us some sandwiches. When he brought over a little one he'd made for Scrap, I asked him if he had any fresh vegetables and grains. When I did, I halfway thought Scrap would hate me for it. But that's what they wound up eating. So I figured I wasn't all the way off base with that. It doesn't really work. It doesn't really work. It's too much. While Slappy had the mindfulness to grill a tiny little sandwich for Scrap, I had to ask if he had any fresh vegetables and grains in the kitchen. He did. Better. While the Sergeant and I were learning how to ride our Spore Locust, High Command had taken a shuttle from had been taking a shuttle from Planet Zero to Tartarus Base, which, as I said, is a big rig-style colony in the belly of a void well named Hades. Once Hades had finished migrating to Planet Link, High Command took a transport down to Paxis Base and put some questions to Commander Paxis about where the Admiral's at. Mind is at. About where the Admiral's mind is at. Here we go. Here we go. This is a little bit messy. Where is the Admiral's mind at? It's focused on planet Soros, picking a fight against the capital of the Saurian Empire and running operations out of Deep Down Base. Built into the old abandoned Octonia mines of Soros, Deep Down Base has always been a little like a military fort, but it's not. Regular people live down there. If the Undersource find it, some of those people are going to get killed. Time was running short for us. High Command can't go anywhere without people asking why, and Commander Paxis was pushing them for answers. Tell him. Just tell him. We're going straight from here to planet Soros, right? If he wants to fill in his brother, if he wants to fill his brother in on what we're up to, then whoever carries that message will need to jump the exact same mothership we'll be on. Whoever it is, they'll probably need us. This is all very complicated. To help them get on and off in the first place, Commander Paxis isn't getting a message to his brother any faster than we can get to the Admiral for ourselves. So let's just tell him. Okay. Okay. Time was running short for us. High Command couldn't go anywhere without people asking why, and Commander Paxis was pushing them for answers about what the Sarge and I have been up to all this time. Let's tell him. Commander Paxis isn't getting a message to his brother any faster than we can get to the Admiral for ourselves, so let's just tell him. Let's see whose side he's really on. Tell him about the spore. We don't need to tell him about the mislings. I think you will, said Scrap. Will we? We've got to deal with the Spore Queen. Why does anyone need to know about the mislings? Because they'll want to know how it is you're moving the spores, that's why. And if we tell them, and if they know that flickering is a thing that mislings can do, they'll want to control it. I don't think we can tell Commander Paxis what we're doing. I don't think we can tell the Admiral either. I think we either do it or we don't, and then it's all on us. It's the only way. I think we either do this thing and save the Earth. I think we either do this thing and bring the spore to Earth or we don't. Keeping this among ourselves is the only way we can protect the mislings and the Rockmans. High Commander Disco perks up at my mention of the Rockmans. Yes, the Rockmans, Planet Rock. The Admiral knows about Planet Rock already. You're not the first Rangers to visit. There was a Saurian colony, or there was. Well, is the Admiral planning on invading Planet Rock? High Commander Demo takes a deep breath. Not yet. I wouldn't put it past him. Leaning onto the table, the Sarge looks the High Commanders in the eye. He doesn't actually want to hurt anyone, does he? He wants to be right. He's trying his best to be right, and he's stuck in a loop where fighting the Saurians is always right. But the Mislings aren't the Saurians, just like the Rockmans aren't the Saurians. Maybe he can see that. Maybe he deserves a chance. If the humans make war with my people, it will be bad. Scrap looks grim. But Scrap's right. It would be bad. Bad for humans. I know what it is to be a jump ranger, and so I have trusted your high command. I also know what it is to be a soldier. I do not trust this Admiral Paxis. Scrap, Paxis was a jump ranger. Which one, the Admiral or the commander? Both, actually. For a moment, Scrap loses themselves in thought. Scrap, sometimes it's easier to ask for forgiveness than for permission. If we go and get the spore, and if we help them get started on Earth, and if we help the spore get started on Earth, then Admiral Paxis can blame me and the Sarge for the rest of his natural life. All that matters is that it works. No, he will still want to know how you did it, and he will have nothing better to do than to make you tell him. Once he learns about the spore, once he learns about the mislings, and once he learns about Eden, he may see potential enemies. He may see power for the taking. And besides, You have to be good. You have to be smart. This is the code of the Jump Ranger. Okay, that's not quite clear. Okay, we're taking a little step back. We're looking at the previous paragraph right before the Rockmans. So I think you will, said Scrap. Will we? We've got to deal with the Spore Queen. Why does anyone need to know about the Mistlings? I answered my own question. Sitting there in Slappy's dining room, I answered my own question. Moving the spores across the galaxy is an amazing feat, and they'll want to know how we did it. And if we tell them, they'll know that flickering is a thing that Mistlings can do. And if they know that flickering is a thing that Mistlings can do, they'll want to control it. I don't think we can tell Commander Paxis what we're doing. I don't think we can tell the Admiral either. I think we either do this thing and bring the spore to Earth, or we don't. Keeping this amongst ourselves is the only way we can protect the Mistlings and the Rockmans. High Commander Disco perks up at the mention of the Rockmans. Yes, the Rockmans. Yes, Disco. The Rockmans, Planet Rock. The Admiral knows about Planet Rock already. You're not the first Ranger to visit there. We don't need that. So, High Commander Disco perks up at the mention of the Rockmans. The Admiral knows about Planet Rock already. You're not the first Rangers to visit there. There's a Saurian colony. Or there was. Well, is the Admiral planning on invading Planet Rock? High Commander Demo takes a deep breath. Not yet. Leaning into the table, the Sarge looks the High Commanders in the eye. He doesn't actually want to hurt anyone, does he? He wants to be right. That's all he wants. He's trying his best to be right. In his mind, fighting the Saurians is always right. But the Mistlings aren't the Saurians, just like the Rockmans aren't the Saurians. But the Mistlings aren't the Saurians. The Rockmans aren't the Saurians. Maybe he can see that. Maybe he deserves a chance. If the humans make war with my people, it will be bad. Scrap looks grim, but Scrap's right. It would be bad. Bad for humans. I know what it is to be a Jump Ranger. Okay, bad for humans. Realizes that he's threatened us. Taking a moment, a Scrap considers that he's threatened us. I know what it is to be a Jump Ranger, so I have trusted your high command. I also know what it is to be a soldier. I do not trust this Admiral Paxis. Scrap Paxis was a Jump Ranger. Which one, the Admiral or the Commander? Both, actually. For a moment, Scrap loses themselves in thought. Scrap Sometimes it's easier to ask for forgiveness than permission. If we go and get the spore, and if we help the spore get started on Earth, then Admiral Paxis can blame me and the Sarge. All that matters is that it works. No, he will still want to know how you did it, and he will have nothing better to do than to make you tell him. That's all he has to say. And if you succeed, he will have nothing better to do than to make you tell him. Scrap was right. Being good and smart. Okay. We're just going to delete a little bit more. What we were starting to see sitting around that table was that there were no good options. All we had were messy options. Do we give Admiral Paxis the chance to do the right thing? That was the question we were facing. If we do, and if he throws it in our faces, then at least we know who we're dealing with. When we go to the Spore Queen, or even to Scrap, we can be honest about who Paxis is and what he can do. Not telling him seemed like it was going to be a whole lot easier. We have a rule for that. We call it the hard rule. Because we almost never do things the easy way. And if we were going to tell Admiral Paxis, we might as well tell the commander. Maybe his reaction will tell us something about how to deal with the Admiral. Maybe he'll even help us. 20 minutes later, Commander Sudropaxis was sitting with us in our row of booths at the Ranger's Roost. Together, the Sarge and Scrap and I laid out what we had done and how and why. Then we explained that we intended to ask his brother to abandon his war on Soros and help us bring the spore to Earth. What matters in the end is that the Saurians are forced to leave Earth alone, and that humanity gets to have a home again. What matters in the end is that the Saurians are forced to leave Earth alone. Period. What matters is that humanity gets to have a home again. For a long moment, Commander Paxis was silent. Watching him, you could see ideas hitting his brain like a meteor shower on an airless moon. After what felt like an hour, he looked me in the eye. Then he looked around at the high commanders sitting all around me. I'm going to talk this over with my brother. You're taking me to Deep Down Base. Fauna, High Command Xeno Ranger, considers the commander. We can do that. Not you, says the commander. Them. He was pointing at the Sarge and I. Wrench, the Sarge, and Scrap have all the intel my brother needs. You're asking for a decision. He doesn't need Ranger High Command breathing down his neck to give you that. He needs the information. Wrench and the Sarge can give him that. We don't need that much information. Wrench, the Sarge, and Scrap have all the intel my brother needs. You're asking for a decision. He doesn't need Ranger High Command breathing down his neck to give you that. Commander Paxis was telling Ranger High Command not to go to Soros. If Commander Paxis was trying to talk us out of bringing the spore to Earth, this is how he'd do it. If Commander Paxis was planning to talk us out of bringing the spore to Earth, this is how he'd do it. The Sarge and I were going to be a lot easier to bully if the Paxis brothers can get us to themselves. Okay. We're going to be a lot easier to bully if the Paxis brothers could get us to ourselves, could get us alone. Stroking her chin, Flora nodded. Yeah, okay, fewer people will be harder to notice on a Saurian mothership. Stroking her chin, Flora nodded. Yeah, fewer people will be harder to notice jumping on a Saurian mothership. Wrench and the Sarge can take you to Deep Down Base. I don't know if High Command was scared of General Paxos or his brother, or whether they were just getting old, but this was them backing down at the very first sign of pressure, right when we needed them the most. This was them giving up right when we needed them the most. Right when we needed them most. Fine, that's fine. If you want to get things done, you can't expect a leader to help you out. Leaders always have plans of their own, which is why leaders always have plans. If you want to get things done, you can't expect a leader to help you. Leaders always have plans of their own, which is why they became leaders to start with. To make things happen, especially something big, you need to become that leader yourself. You need to lead for yourself. Give that leadership to others. Yeah, you need to lead for yourself. Anyway, High Command had made their decision. So fine, that's fine. If you want to get things done, you can't expect your leaders to help you. One thing I've learned is if you want to get things done, you can't expect your leaders to help you. Leaders always have plans of their own, which is why they became leaders to start with. To make things happen, especially when it's something big, you need to lead for yourself. Leaders always have too many plans of their own to help a person like me, to help a person like me. This is which is why they became leaders to start with. We'll just stop here. Fine, that's fine. One thing I've learned is that if you want to get things done, you can't expect your leaders to help you. Leaders always have too many plans of their own to help a person like me. To make things happen, especially when it's something big, you need to lead for yourself. Anyway, High Command had made their decision. The Sarge and I were taking Commander Paxos to Soros. When we got there, we'd be facing the Paxos brothers on our own. Before we knew what was happening, it was time to leave. Maybe Scrap could have just jumped us. Maybe Scrap could have jumped us straight to Soros. Hmm. Scrap was telling us that many people to Flickr. And that they felt nervous flickering. Commander Paxos came right out and asked them whether there was some reason Scrap didn't want him to see flickering. To see how flickering works. Scrap. Let's see. Before we knew what was happening, it was time to leave. Scrap was telling us that they'd never been to Soros. 3 people was too many for them to handle. and that they felt nervous about flickering. Commander Paxis came right out and asked them whether there was some other reason Scrap didn't want him to see how flickering works. Whether there was some reason why Scrap didn't want him to see how flickering works. All Scrap would say is that a ranger needs to remain smart in their efforts. This is the code. 2 days later, we were sneaking Commander Sutropaxis down the air cans of Blister City and through the spaceport's air ducts onto the mothership impending. When the impending finally shuddered into inner space, that's when it hit me. The Sarge and I were jumping with Ranger High Command. No, that's. So I think a lot of this has changed. I think I've rewritten this. Maybe okay. Into the mothership impending. Maybe a year or so, maybe a year ago, I asked the Sarge why he partnered with me in the first place. Why he partnered up with me. When you get right down to it, the Sarge is a very cool little kid. He has no business being this cool at 8 years old. Me, I'm too smart for my own good. I'm always taking things a step too far. That's what my parents used to tell me. Why was a cool little kid like the Sarge interested in me as a partner? Does this even make sense? Oh, yeah. 2 days later, we were sneaking Commander Sutropaxis down the air cans of Blister City and through the spaceport's air ducts onto the mothership impending. Maybe maybe a year ago. Okay, so let's just take this from the top because I'm a little tongue-tied and I beg your pardon. 2 days later, we were sneaking Commander Sutropaxis down the air cans of Blister City and through the spaceport's air ducts onto the mothership impending. Maybe a year ago, I asked the Sarge why he partnered up with me. When you get right down to it, the Sarge is a very cool little kid. He has no business being this cool at 8 years old. Me, I'm too smart for my own good. I'm always taking things a step too far. That's what my parents used to tell me. Why was a cool little kid like the Sarge interested in me as a partner? What the Sarge told me, at least back then, was that nobody else was taking things far enough. Once we were all bunked down behind the trash bulkhead of the mothership impending, with the commander of Pax's base resting easily in a hammock, and I asked the Sarge if he still felt that way. My question got him thinking, and he sat there in stillness and silence. He never answered. I think this really needed some editing, for sure. And I'm going to tell you right now, I think going forward, I've had less time. So I think there's going to be more of this editing going on with this series. But I do think it's better. I think it's stronger. I think overall this book is in a very good place. I think it's an interesting read, and even the kind of slow parts are fascinating. I, I was thinking the other day about how I want this book to work, and I do want it to feel a little bit 70s. I want it to feel a little bit like The Hobbit, maybe, where we take time to examine the internal lives of our characters and where it's not written. I mean, this is not something that I'm going to have any trouble adapting for the screen, but it's not written for the screen. It's written to be read, and it's written to communicate to a reader. I think that's important. And I want, as I go through my rewrites, as I work on the novel, once I finish the rough draft, I want that to be kind of a hallmark of what's going on. So let's talk a little bit about the rest of the week. I have canceled the mission files. I don't think it's working. Um, again, time is short. I don't have a lot of time to write for Jump Rangers. It's more important now that I get the illustrations done, and that means getting more writing done for other things, including what I'm going to be working on as soon as I get off the stream. Um, So I'm going to cancel that, and I'm going to see about scheduling maybe another game at some point during the week. Metagame is only happening once every couple of weeks, maybe. It will be happening this week, this Saturday at 2 p.m. 2 p.m. 2:30 p.m. Pacific time, and that's a weekly. It's a semi-weekly session where I sit down with some developers on the project, and and I do that. I play Jump Rangers with people who are actively working on Jump Rangers and who are familiar with the world building. So that's fun. What else? Um, I am getting back into streaming Star Citizen. If anybody wants to hang out with me and stream video games, there's a lot happening in Star Citizen. I'm not going to talk about it on this particular stream, but it's been a lot of fun. And there's a lot of screenplays to write right now. There's a lot of work coming in, which I'm extremely grateful for. We had a very busy month. Um, it's going to be a busy month this month as well. I'm working on something right now, and a lot of it is ghostwriting, so it'll never be discussed. But my clients have been consistently happy with the work that I've been doing over the course of the last few months, so that's gratifying and exciting because some of it's been very challenging, and that's good. That tells me that I'm in a really good place as a writer. Anyways, I'm just rambling. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to talk about Jump Rangers, obviously check out the Patreon, and the other place to go to is our Discord, and there's links below. I always like talking about this stuff, and there's a lot to talk about. We're going to be exploring some of the content that I've written on the mission files, as well as a whole bunch of backlog content that's available through the Patreon. Patreon's only $5 a month. You get the core book for free. You can play the game, and you can read the first 10 chapters of the novel for free as well. But with $5 a month, you get 5 supplements, and coming up on our 100th micro supplement, including the chapters of this book, which is very exciting, and a whole lot of other stuff besides. So if you like what we're doing, please check it out. Thank you for watching. Don't be a stranger, Ranger.